Back to the moon or on to Mars? That's one of the big questions right now for U.S. space exploration, which has become one of America's new partisan battlegrounds. So here with me now to talk about this space race is Todd Harrison. He is a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thanks so much for joining us today, Todd.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so what do you think? Where should we go first? Back to the moon or to Mars?
Well, we just need a destination somewhere. I think, in the long run, where we would get the most scientific value is actually going to Mars and sending humans to Mars one day, just because we've never been there. And so we have not fully explored the planet and don't know everything about the environment that's there. The moon, obviously, we have been there before. We have learned a lot. There's still more to learn. I think that the moon may make sense as a good intermediary step. First of all, to redevelop the technology to get us there and to do deep space exploration, but then also serve as a base of sorts where we can prepare larger missions to go on to the moon.
Sure. So you mentioned the scientific benefit, of course, of going to Mars, but is there also a business or economic case to be made here for either location?
Yeah, exploration has to lead the way, and once you explore, you can then start to realize, okay, what's the economic case? What's the business case of going here and doing something and having a prolonged presence? So I don't think personally that we've done enough exploration already for the moon or Mars to know one way or another whether or not there'll ever be a business case that closes. There are a lot of ideas of things we could do, in terms of in the moon. Mining for minerals and other resources that may be difficult to find here on Earth. We may be able to mine for them more easily on the moon, but then there's the cost, there's the economics of bringing that material back to Earth, which is quite expensive. One of the most important things, most valuable things you can actually mine in space is rocket fuel, propellant, that will take you other places. And so you can make rocket propellant from water. We believe that there's a good amount of water at the polar regions of the moon, but we've never actually gone there to try to mine it and manufacture it and turn it into a propellant.
Interesting. So then the case for it being a base looking good there if that were a possibility. But back to Mars here, what do you think about Elon Musk's plan to colonize Mars? Is that far-fetched or would we be able to see that one day?
It's far-fetched. I don't think there's much hope of us ever seeing something like that in our lifetimes. The idea for being able to terraform, basically to transform the entire environment of Mars into one that is hospitable to human life, is something that's been around in science fiction for decades. The truth is we don't know enough about the environment of Mars. We don't know enough about our own environment on Earth in order to control our own planet's climate, much less fundamentally alter the climate of another planet. So it is pretty far-fetched. I don't want to say it's impossible, but I think we're looking at something that at best it's 100 years off or more.
Right. Well, as far as humans making it to Mars for the exploration aspect, when do you think that would happen? Is that still really far off? Or, who do you think is going to get there first? Because in addition to the U.S., there are, of course, other countries that are being somewhat aggressive with their space exploration plans.
Yeah, and other countries are going to try, and I think it's great to have multiple projects that are trying to get humans to Mars. Ultimately, I think it's something that the first mission that makes it there, it's going to be a consortium. It's not just going to be the United States; it'll be the U.S. with other partner countries. The more countries we can partner with, especially those that bring substantial space capabilities of their own and resources, like Russia and China, the broader that partnership is, the sooner we are likely to get there. And the other thing to remember is there are commercial companies that are competing in this as well.
Right.
And I think that commercial companies will be part of the coalition that eventually gets to Mars.
So speaking of these commercial companies, we have Elon Musk and his SpaceX, Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin. So how do you think that their plans are shaping where the space race will head as far as the moon or Mars versus NASA or even the White House? How are they kind of shaping the conversation?
Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they can bring a lot of their own personal wealth to these projects. But at the end of the day, even Jeff Bezos doesn't have enough money to send a mission to Mars. They're going to need to partner with NASA. And so I think that, the technologies that they are developing, the large launch vehicles they're developing, the spacecraft, the human-rated spacecraft that they are working on, I think that what their real business plan is going to ultimately be is to partner with NASA so that NASA can leverage those technologies that have been privately developed and use them in the U.S. space program for deep space exploration. So I think it's going to be a partnership, and I think that both of those companies and other companies, some of the more traditional space contractors like Boeing and Lockheed, I think all of them have an important role to play. The challenge for NASA is to figure out how to work with these companies because they're all very different. They have different operating models. And the old model of NASA writing all the requirements and NASA coming up with a design and then telling a contractor to go build it, that's probably not going to work anymore. What we're looking at with SpaceX and Blue Origin is that they are going off and they are designing their own vehicles to their own requirements, and then NASA is just going to be able to choose between them. And say, well, I'd like one of these or one of those. So that's a different operating model for NASA. It's a different way of partnering with industry. But I think that's a transition that NASA is starting to make.
All right. Well, one final question. Now we've, seen the path kind of change course a little bit here over the past few presidencies. So, do you think now we're on a path where it's too late to change course, or could we see that happen again?
It is interesting that, going to the Mars first or the moon first has become partisan political, even though, fundamentally it shouldn't be. I would never underestimate the ability of, the executive branch or the legislative branch to throw a wrench in the gears and stop the program and change direction again. That's the political reality is that could happen again. As it happened, going from the George W. Bush administration, they had the Constellation program. They were going back to the moon. The Obama administration came in. They canceled that, and they said, nope, we're going to go to Mars and maybe a near-Earth asteroid. Now you got the Trump administration coming in, and they're saying, nope, we're going to go back to the moon. So, this could happen again. You cannot completely discount that. I think one of the things that may be different this time, though, is you've got so much more momentum in the commercial space industry, pushing for these large launch vehicles and going out and doing deep space exploration. That may actually provide enough political inertia to keep this going forward.
All right. Sounds great. I think we'll leave it there. Very fascinating. And thank you so much for all of your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and make sure to head to investors.com for our feature story on this space race and for all the latest market news and analysis. Thanks for watching. This is Alyssa Corum.